I think I was known as for being quite an odd guy at uni anyway, and just doing things because they were funny. And then I just got so lucky one day where I walked past Zach Alsop on the street, who was a fellow YouTuber at the time, who had about 30,000 subscribers at the time. And I said to him, look, mate, if you ever need a cameraman for anything, let me know. But I said to Zach, oh yeah, I make videos as well. I've got like 18 million views on my videos. And he weirdly said, yeah, actually, well, we're filming something tomorrow. Do you want to come and help film? So I helped film there. And then he had this idea to kind of break me into London Fashion Week, dressed up as a model. And we did that. And then that was just kind of like, boom. Just went stratospheric.
Please, welcome to the stage, it's me, Max Fosh!
I don't think I do enough to combat burnout. I do therapy. That was one of the first things that I bought with some YouTube money, was like therapy. But then it all boils down to like ideas of like self-esteem. I've kind of got to a kind of an impasse where I know the things that make me feel bad when it comes to like negative thoughts when it comes to video making, and like have big numbers. But the goalposts just move daily. I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but...
Hey friends, welcome back to Deep Dive, the weekly podcast where every week it is my immense privilege to sit down with academics and authors and entrepreneurs and creators and other inspiring people, and we find out how they got to where they are and the strategies and tools we can learn from them to help live our own best lives. Now, what you're about to hear is an interview that I've just done with Max Fosh. Max is a YouTuber and stand-up comedian. You might have seen a video which now has 30 million views where he and our friends Zach and Jay, they faked him as a model to the top of London Fashion Week wearing like a garbage bag or something like that. Recently, he's also gone viral for playing a prank where he convinced people landing at Gatwick Airport that they were landing at Luton Airport instead. He famously ran for mayor of London a couple of years ago. He has gotten an official presidential pardon for a crime that he committed in 2009. And he seems to have built a career off the back of being an internet prankster kind of vibe. Anyway, this is a sick conversation. We talk about how he became disillusioned with the world of corporations and like big corporate and a real job. And we talk about his journey through university, how getting involved in student radio ultimately led to him doing silly things on the internet and making silly videos, now to the point where his YouTube channel is at nearly 1.5 million subscribers. He's building his own team. He's just done a whole stand-up proper show thing at the Edinburgh Fringe and is performing at the London Palladium Theatre, which is this huge venue, in about 2 months. And me and the team are going to be getting tickets to that. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Max Fosh. By the way, just a flag, we actually had a bit of an audio issue for the first 5 or so minutes of this episode. We've kept him in because it's top banter and Max is like really freaking funny and like, yeah, but please excuse the audio for the first 5 minutes. It gets really good beyond that point.
You've been described as lots and lots of things.
I'm really interested to know what you're going to describe me as, because is it going to be prankster? Because that's normally the number one that people go for.
Oh, so I was going to ask you how you describe yourself, but the line from the video where I first discovered you was Zach and Jay's Fashion Week one, unsurprisingly. Yes. 30 million views. We faked a fake model to the top of London Fashion Week. Yeah. They described you as, we need a confident, unfashionable, blank canvas of a man.
Yeah, that was.
Do you feel like that's a reasonable?
I think that's probably quite fair from Zach and Jay. I think I get a lot of prankster, which I don't massively love. I get a lot of what do you do? That's mainly from my like close family and friends. A lot of my family and friends still think I make radio. I still think I do radio because I started off like being a radio presenter.
Yeah, one of your like internet bios says broadcaster before YouTuber. When we were doing our research, it was like Max Fosh is a broadcaster. Is he broadcaster?
I just don't think the kind of mainstream know what they just kind of panic and they're like, okay, what do we call this guy? So I think content creator is probably the best fitting one.
Yeah. So your story is somewhat circuitous and like interesting. So I wonder if we can just sort of start there.
Sure.
From my understanding, about 10 years ago, 2013, you started an internship, and that started your hatred of the corporate world.
Yes.
Well, what was going on there?
Yeah, I kind of grew up in a very kind of a privileged bubble. I went to a school called Harrow School, which is a very well-known and posh private school here in the UK, and I don't want to kind of like badmouth the school. And so this wasn't something that was actively being kind of pushed, but there was a feeling I felt of like, right, you go into certain avenues in a career. So whether that's law or finance or medicine. And finance definitely was one of the big ones. And my father worked in insurance. And so when I was 17, I got the kind of very nepotistic opportunity to go and sit and just I observe, which I found is a really interesting way of like prefacing an internship of going to observe. Like, you're 17, you have no idea what's going on. I sat there for a week and I thought, is this it? Is this... Are we all aware that this is the thing that everyone is so excited about? And I kind of got very kind of disenfranchised with the idea that I was going to go and work in the city or work in finance.
So, like, I've never worked a corporate job. What was it like?
It was everyone. So you get in. You don't really. How's your evening? Yeah, good, thanks, mate. You're nice. Tap for 2 hours. Don't say anything. One stale bit of banter gets flown around about Greg that's come in 30 minutes late with some ketchup down his top. Oh, big breakfast, Greg. Yeah. And then tap. And I was then sent to fetch the pies at lunch. And that was my favourite part of the day, because that's when I got to actively do something. I got really excited to go get the pies. And came back, and then some more stale banter about Greg. and then after work drinks where people would get pissed and they'd go home. Like, I'd just like to preface, this isn't the entire existence of people who live in the corporate world. This was just my experience in the week that I was working there at 17. And I kind of realised I was much more, I wanted something that was much more creatively fulfilling. And so when I went to university, I changed my course within the first kind of 3 or 4 months from economics and finance to English literature. And this was kind of one of the first times that I realised I was probably quite good at blagging something, because I hadn't done English at A-level. And so I walked into the English school and said, hi, I'd like to do your degree, please. And they said, okay, what did you earn your English A-level? I said, oh, I didn't do it. And they said, okay, well, then we can't offer you a place in the English school. And I remember I said, for some reason, but what if I get a 2-1 in my first year in economics? That surely proves that I'm a good student, so I'd be valued to your school. I think she was so taken aback, the head of English, that she just said, yeah, okay, fine, deal. And I ended up getting a 2-1 in my first year of economics, and so then that made me do English literature. And so that was suddenly, I was terrible at English literature, but it meant I was suddenly doing things that were slightly more creative.
Okay. So at age 19, you sort of find your way into English literature as a degree.
Yeah.
What happens next in the maths part?
So I was then I was just joining societies. I was just like super interested and excited, going from this very institutionalized world of Harrow, where you get up at a certain time every day and you do this and then you do this and you do this, into like meeting loads of different people from loads of different backgrounds and doing things that I probably would have had the opportunity to do at Harrow, but it would be very regimented. So I suddenly realized I could have my own radio show. I joined the Theatre Society. I joined something called the 20-Minute Society, which is where they take your number, and at any point throughout the week, they'll text you with an activity, and you need to be there in 20 minutes. You have to drop everything you're doing. And I love this like spontaneous like nature of university life. And so I was trying loads of different things, and I understood, I really like entertaining people, whether that's on stage with the Theatre Society or broadcasting, or basically just being able to talk uninterrupted for an hour on the radio. And so I did student radio, which then led me into hospital radio in Newcastle. Did that for 4 years.
Okay, the internship.
Yes.
What was it like?
So I arrived in this kind of corporate world at 17, working in kind of, I think it was trading, and I kind of was really shocked at how this was it. This was the thing that we'd been kind of told. Okay, yeah, well, not necessarily by the institutional or teachers, but just by like peers and peers' parents.
This is the pinnacle.
This is the pinnacle. Like, you're working in the city, you get to work in Lloyd's and go to Bank Station in your pinstripe suit every day and get your Pret subscription coffee. Here we go, lads, strap in. And then afterwards, you have a couple of pints at the pub and you have some very stale conversation. And so I kind of spent this week just being told to go and get pies and to just observe. I remember I did actually get into a relatively confrontational conversation with somebody, because someone said to me, you're not doing anything. This is an opportunity that so many people would kill to do. You're not concentrating on what we're doing. I said, I don't know what you're doing. Just give me something to do. And actually that did work, because then I was tasked with putting together the newsletter that the people would come into the office every morning and see the newsletter from the night before the markets in Asia. So I was getting in at 3-4 a.m. To write up what had happened in the markets, send them to people's inboxes at 8 a.m., which they 100% sent straight to junk. And then I got to leave at like 2 or 3. But my point was that it wasn't what I wasn't creatively fulfilled. And I thought, right, let's go and try and see if there's anything else. And so that when I went to university, I like really made sure that I'm going to get my head down and just try loads of different things.
Nice. We were talking about student radio. Like, what is student radio?
Student radio is essentially a cupboard which has some foam on the walls, a microphone that doesn't work, and some students thinking that they are Nick Grimshaw for an hour of every single day. And the idea is that some student radios are better than others. Like, some of them are really good. Sunderland have one called Spark that is genuinely its own FM station, so it broadcasts in in Sunderland. Whereas Newcastle, when I was there, it wasn't very good. Most of the time, the broadcast output just wouldn't work. So you wouldn't actually be broadcasting to anybody.
So you'd just be talking in this microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
In a cupboard.
In a cupboard. And you could listen to it online, I think, but often that wouldn't work. And I remember they had a real humbling experience. They had a listener counter. I found out there was a listener counter about 2 or 3 shows in. And I logged on and I saw there were 3 people listening. And I knew that I knew 2 of those people because I'd asked them and sent them the link. Okay. So it was just an opportunity for me to try just being a radio presenter and like coming up with your own show and writing your own show. What are the segments? Okay, getting some outside broadcast stuff and vox pops and so I did that for about a year, and I realized there's no progression here. I'm just coming in and doing the same thing every week. And so luckily I looked into and found hospital radio, which in Newcastle when I was there, or still is, the hospital station there called Radio Tyneside was really well run. And it was quite well funded.
As in a radio station that's being broadcast in the hospital?
Yes. So in hospitals, you have 5 buttons, I think, not in all hospitals, but in a lot of them. So 5 buttons of radio stations. So there's Radio 1, Radio 4, Classic FM, Magic, and then normally the local station, which is hospital radio. So we had Radio Tyneside was broadcasting to the 6 hospitals, I think, in the Newcastle and Gateshead area. So we had quite like a large listener base. And
I guess the patients in beds who are choosing to not go for Radio 1 or Radio 4.
I mean, it's quite slim pickings. It's kind of almost this like hostage situation where you're almost forcing them to listen to you. But I worked there for 3 years and started on the overnight shift of like 2 a.m. till 4 a.m. and then worked my way up. And when I left my last year, I was doing the breakfast show. So
what does that look like? Like, what does your 2 to 4 a.m. shift and hospital radio look like?
Luckily, a lot of it could be pre-recorded. So you could, they would like you to do a few live shows, but you could go in and pre-record the entire thing. And obviously there wouldn't be any interaction with the patients, but there kind of rarely was. When you're in hospital, you're not exactly like picking up your phone and texting into Radio Tyneside.
Especially at 2 a.m.
Exactly. So it just kind of like was any other radio station in the sense that it was the same software, and you just kind of
So are you playing music, or are you like doing so just a minute? Or
you're playing music. You're playing music, which is easy listening music, which has been pre-programmed into the computer. But as I was there for longer, I realized that I could like swap things out, and no one would really notice. I then did get in trouble because I once had a few complaints because I played the song "Highway to Hell" on hospital radio, and I did nearly get sacked. But what was funny is I was brought up not on the fact of the title and the content of the song broadcast on hospital radio, but more the fact that it wasn't easy listening. And so you're playing music, you play like 3 or 4 tracks, and then you get like a minute or 45 seconds of whatever you want to talk about, and then repeat.
So
over the course of 2 hours.
What is so? It's been years since I've listened to like a music radio station. So what does the stuff in between the songs like? What would you be saying?
It could be anything. Genuinely, like,
it's a lovely day today.
Yeah,
it's 2:04 in the morning here at Tyneside.
Yeah, normally that's when like segments are quite important, or you kind of. Every hour you have to do one of those. Needs to be what's on in Newcastle this week. So you get given like a little booklet. Okay, and we see, this person's playing at the Tyne Theatre Opera House, and this person. I don't know why you're like broadcasting that, because these people are in hospital and they're not exactly like keen to catch some live comedy. Yeah. But then the rest of it is you can do whatever you like. So I did a lot of like vox pop stuff. So I would go out.
What does that mean?
So I would go and interview people on the street.
Oh.
So previously I would go out, interview people, get some content, edit it together, and then put it in that segment. So it's like, last week in Newcastle, I went out to go find out whether people thought there were more eyes or legs in the world, and then just go, So I was kind of creating these like 1 minute long segments that I would then like put in. And I was obsessed with this idea. That's when I realized I want to go into radio. Like I want to be a radio presenter. And I'd seen the career progression of all these kind of like my idols in the radio world. They had all done hospital radio, and then they'd won this award at the Hospital Broadcasting Association Awards, which is like, it's the big night in the hospital radio calendar. And I was up for Best Newcomer, and I won Best Newcomer.
Nice one.
Here we go. Come on, offers. Let's see. Radio 1, I'm free to do a show. And none came. I got one offer of a demo for BBC Radio Newcastle. And I remember it was kind of a moment where I realized that I wasn't going to be a radio presenter, because I walked in and they were like, great, okay, Max, we're going to get you to do a demo. Fantastic. Okay, just talk about whatever you want as if it's your own show. And all the other voices on BBC Radio Newcastle were like, welcome back to BBC Radio Newcastle, fantastic local radio for the Northeast. And we've got Max here this afternoon. I'm like, hello, nice to see you all. And it's safe to say that I didn't get the job of local radio in the Northeast with the plummiest accent. So that's when I kind of realized, I'm not really going to get a job in radio in the places that I would really like to get one.
So you didn't want Radio 4?
No, I mean,
I feel like you fit right in there.
Yeah, maybe, but that I was looking after some excitement and to do like silly things and to try.
So the Archers Omnibus is not your idea of fun.
No,
yeah,
not yet. It will be in a couple of years, but not at the age of 21. So that's when I just kind of started doing. I realized that I had loads of radio stuff, but I didn't have any like video stuff, and I was obsessed with this idea of getting an agent. I don't know why. I thought once you get an agent, you are sorted. Like everything's okay. So I thought, okay, I need to make a show reel, but I don't have any video stuff. So I then thought, right, let's do just man on the street content, like interviewing people. I was in Newcastle, lots of students on nights out. Let's go chat to them. And I reached out to the TV Society that was doing their own show.
A TV Society?
Yeah.
Was that a university society?
A university society that makes like television.
Oh.
And they were doing their own version of this called Big Market Banter. And I applied to be a presenter on Big Market Banter, and they said, no, sorry, we've got all our presenters at the moment. So I was like, well, great. I mean, it's in public. I can just go do it myself. So I filmed 5 episodes of me just interviewing people on nights out and put them on Facebook, and people were tagging their mates, or Ali, or lol, can't believe that person said that, so funny, or look where he is. And it kind of started doing quite well in the sense of like 1,000 people in my university would see it. And people were like, oh, you should keep doing them. And I was like, okay, I guess I will. So then for my last year at university, I was just every single week, I would go out and make a new video on a different topic and go back, edit the video and put it up onto Facebook.
Okay.
And
lots of questions on this.
Yeah.
How did you have the confidence to just do this? Was it just the way you were born? Was it the private school? Was it like what?
I genuinely think it's everything.
Dots,
Like I am inherently a bit of a show off and very extroverted, and I like talking to people. And I was, I just saw what it was being done. So the Big Market Bank, I was watching this, and I saw there were 18-minute long episodes, these things. And I remember the first minute would be, hi guys, welcome back to the show. Super excited. Harry and Becky here. So today we're going to be going out and interviewing. And I remember thinking, I'm so bored already. And I was watching at the same time people like Kasim G on YouTube over in the States, and like, this guy is really funny. I want to make my own stuff like this. And so it was mainly just the answer of how did I have the confidence to do it? I just kind of didn't really think anything of it. And I think that's probably very lucky, the upbringing I had. Harrow very much instilled this like confidence, this assumed confidence in like things that I did. And like, because when you first get there, the first thing you have to do is like do a song in front of your whole boarding house. Oh. So like you're 13 and you have to sing a song. You have to sing a song in front of 80 boys.
What song did you sing?
So it's the house song. Oh. So
wow.
Yeah,
and like one at a time.
One at a time.
Wow.
And so even if you can sing, or if you can't sing, like I was constantly being thrown into situations like that where eventually you get very, very comfortable with like uncomfortable situations and getting thrown outside of your comfort zone. And so I guess that's how I had that confidence.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was just a show off.
Fair play. And so what sort of stuff were you asking these people on nights out?
I was just copying what I'd seen on YouTube. So initially, I remember a video that I watched was one this Antipodean news channel did where they said Americans are not stupid, and they went out to America and asked some really easy general knowledge questions, and it went hugely viral. I remember watching this video over and over again. God, this is amazing. It's basically my first video.
Why did it go viral? Americans
because
are not
it was
stupid? Was it like really basic questions?
Yeah, it was like name a country beginning with U.
Yeah,
and it was like Yugoslavia, and they were like, what about the United States of America? Like, oh, God damn it, I hadn't thought of it. And so, genuinely, my first video was me just asking those questions.
Yeah.
And so and I was thinking of like concepts. One was called Cards Against Humanity, where I was just taking the questions, the prompts from Cards Against Humanity, and just getting answers from people on the street. Like, it wasn't particularly difficult.
Yeah.
Stuff.
And how were you filming yourself? Did you have like a camera? What
I had
was
a camera
the setup?
person.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, this is how I kind of got my first employee, a girl called Coco, like just friends of mine. It's like, does anyone want to go out and hold the camera with me for 2 hours on a night out? And eventually I found this girl called Coco, and she was like keen. She was like, yeah, that sounds fun. So then she started filming like all of the beginning bit. I wasn't paying her. I wasn't getting paid. No one was getting paid, but it was just like, oh, we're at uni. This is a fun thing to do. And so that's how I managed to get the first person involved. Yeah.
Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and we'll get right back to the episode. And very excitingly, this episode is brought to you by Heights. Heights is a brain care smart supplement that I've actually been taking for the last 12 months, ever since I became friends with Dan Moricerto, who was the founder of Heights and who we had on the podcast in season 1. And this season of the podcast, we're also featuring Dr. Tara Swart, who is a neuroscientist and psychiatrist. So what is Heights? Well, it's a brain care smart supplement. Basically, it is a supplement. You take 2 of them every morning, like I do. It's like these 2 little capsules which have omega-3 oil in them, and they've got a bunch of multivitamins as well. They have all of the details on the website. Every single ingredient that they've got is super high quality. And the great thing is that just by taking 2 of these capsules every morning, like I do, you get all of the essential micronutrients that you need without having to deal with drinking sludge or anything fancy like that. So the great thing about Heights is that even if you don't have one of these absolutely perfect diets, at least you know you have your bases covered in terms of the micronutrients that you need. It's very easy to sign up. You just go to yourheights.com and then you sign up to the thing, and it's a mail order. They get to you every month or in 3-month packets. And if you use the coupon code ALI15, that's ALI15 at checkout, then you'll get 15% off your first 3 months of subscription. I've been subscribed to this for the last 12 months. I also happen to be an investor in the company because I believe in the product, and I love how they're fully evidence-based in absolutely everything they do. And if you're interested in the evidence base behind all like 20 different ingredients that they've got here, you can check them out on the website, and that'll be linked in the video description and in the show notes. So thank you so much to Heights for sponsoring this episode. You and Coco going on nights out, sticking a microphone or like a phone in front of people and asking them questions, and then splicing it in together to like a
4-minute vid.
Okay, and chuck it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did that for a year. Right. I did that for 18 months.
And this is while you're doing hospital radio on the side?
Yeah. So I was still doing hospital radio.
Is that a paid gig, by the way, hospital radio?
No.
Oh.
So that was all...
So you were doing 2 to 4 a.m. shift hospital radio just purely out of the goodness of your heart?
Yeah. Because it was like, it was exciting. It was fun. Like you suddenly had this big studio and like buttons, and you could basically say whatever you liked as long as you didn't play like Highway to Hell. So yeah, I was doing a lot of, and that formed so much of, it gave me such a big head start on what I now have on YouTube. And I always say to people who they're like, oh, I want to start something. I was like, do it in a period of your life where the risk is so low. Like if it failed, or if I didn't put out a video, it was fine, because I could still go back to my friends and my family. Oh, I'm doing my degree. But I'm doing this bit on the side. And so I had that 18 months where I was at uni, or 3 years of radio, where there was no pressure for it to do well or succeed, because I was, I was also doing a degree.
Yeah, I think that's one of the issues. Whenever the bar is high, and it's like I often find people who have success in some area of life, either it's at uni or it's in their jobs or something, and then they want to start a YouTube channel. Now all of a sudden there's this like high pressure on it of like, oh, this has to succeed, otherwise I'm a failure, otherwise I suck. ...
Yeah, and it needs to work instantly, which is not how YouTube works. I mean, you can kind of hack the system, and you can know retention tactics and all this kind of thing, but I think it takes time for you to understand what you're good at, what you provide the best value in. It's educating people, and me, I think it's entertaining people. But if I decided to start an education channel or a kind of a wellness channel, I wouldn't know where the hell to start. It would take me those 2 years to understand what I was doing.
Okay, so you're chucking these videos on Facebook. What sort of response are you getting from people in the uni scene?
I was just known as, you're that interview guy.
Okay, yeah.
And it was like, doing quite well. I mean, just within that sphere, and it was kind of giving me the social clout that I thought was quite fun at the time. And if as I was doing more of them, and if I was on the night out with my microphone and my camera, like I would have people who were really keen to chat, and they want to be on the videos, and that was really, really cool to think that in like 2 or 3 months I'd grown something that previously I was like begging people, oh, can you be on the, like, can you chat to me for 2 minutes? To then suddenly people are like, oh yeah,
lining up
that guy, there's that guy. But I think I was known as for being quite an odd guy at uni anyway, and just doing things because they were funny. I remember my first year, I realized in my halls of residence that my desk in my room was the exact width of the lift in the halls of residence. And so one evening at midnight, me and my mates, we didn't go out, but we just moved my desk into the lift with my laptop, my books, my plant, my lights. And I would then like work, but my back was to the entrance of the lift, and so like the lift doors would open at 1 a.m, and I'd turn around and like, what are you doing? Get out of my room. And so I got known as like lift boy for a bit at uni. But my point is that I was doing lots of these weird things because they were funny, and I enjoyed doing them, but I wasn't even filming them.
Nice.
So yeah. That was my uni experience.
And so your English degree was a bit of a side hustle while you were doing all this stuff.
Absolutely. I did terribly badly in my English literature degree because I wasn't interested in writing about Chaucer. I was thinking about what were the questions that were going to be tonight when I was going to ask students on nights out.
Just a quick message from one of our sponsors, and we'll get right back to the episode. And this episode is very kindly brought to you by Shortform. Shortform is the world's best service that summarizes books. But it's way more than just book summaries. They almost have a whole study guide for every book that they've got on the platform, where they've got a 1-page summary, and then they also have chapter-by-chapter breakdowns. And it's not just chapter-by-chapter breakdowns. Also, in between the chapter breakdowns, they have interactive exercises where you can engage more readily with the ideas in the book. Shortform covers non-fiction books from a bunch of different genres that you might be interested in. For example, they've got a load of stuff in the business world. So if, for example, you're an entrepreneur or you want to become an entrepreneur, that'll be great for you. They've got books in motivation, they've got books in education, they've got books in lifestyle and communication. Basically, any genre of like non-fiction, personal development-y, self-helpy stuff that will help you level up your life. It's all there on Shortform. Shortform publishes new book guides and articles every week. And if you're a subscriber, then you get to vote on what book they cover next. And in fact, through that system, I have voted for various books that they've then turned into summaries. For example, one of the book guides I read recently was How to Take Smart Notes by Songki Arens, which is a book that I've read in its entirety a handful of times, but I've read the short form summary of the book even more than that because I've been using that to revisit the key lessons from the book, and that feeds into my own system for personal knowledge management. Anyway, if any of that sounds up your street and you would like to sign up to the world's best service that summarizes books, then head over to shortform.com/deep dive, and that will give you a completely free 5-day trial, and you can try out the service to your heart's content. That link will also be in the video description and in the show notes, and thank you so much Shortform for sponsoring this episode. Okay, so what happens next? You're doing hospital radio, you're doing the Facebook video version of interviews.
Yeah.
What happens next?
I graduate uni. I went on a self-proclaimed tour with Street Smart, with this video series. And I thought, okay, this is my one chance. I'm going to like go all or nothing. So for 2 weeks, I drove around the country with Coco. And every night we would go to a new university city. So let's say we started in Bristol. We'd film in Bristol in the evening, go to bed. I'd wake up. I'd edit the Bristol video from the night before, post it, drive to Exeter, film in Exeter, go to bed, edit Exeter. And so we did this for 2 weeks. So we did 14 cities in 14 days.
And at this point, are you on YouTube or is this still Facebook?
All on Facebook. Oh. Well, it was being posted on YouTube, but they were getting like 200 views on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I was posting these on Facebook, and I really thought, right after this 2 weeks, like things are going to blow up because of the consistency of it all, and here we go. And it didn't. And I'd done this 2 weeks, killed myself, like hadn't lost a lot of money on petrol, and that kind of thing. And I was a bit dejected, and I didn't really know I was like, what's the point of this? I kind of had this thing at university, it was working, but it hasn't really like pushed on. And I then worked in a pub for about 3 or 4 months. I was still making the videos. I was still kind of like still going. And then I just got so lucky one day where I walked past Zach Alsop on the street, who was a fellow YouTuber at the time, who had about 30,000 subscribers at the time.
Okay.
And I watched him, and I was a fan of his.
Okay, yeah.
And I said to him, look, mate, if you ever need a cameraman for anything, let me know. And I had been lucky with my Facebook videos that I'd been reposted. One of my videos had been reposted by a big channel called Student Problems, and it got like 18 million views on Student Problems on their page. I didn't see a jot of that revenue. That's beside the point. Cheers, Student Problems. But I said to Zach, oh yeah, I make videos as well. I've got like 18 million views on my videos, right? Just purely just trying to like flex as much as I could. Like, give me a job. And he weirdly said, yeah, actually, well, we're filming something tomorrow. Do you want to come and help film? So I helped film there and got to know him a little bit better. And over the course of like 3 or 4 months, we kind of did more work. I was still working at the pub. And then he had this idea to kind of break me into London Fashion Week, dressed up as a model. And we did that. And then that was just kind of like, boom, just went stratospheric.
Yeah. So what was that like?
It was...
and if you can give some context for people who might not have seen that video.
Yeah. So the video was... it was basically a total rip-off of a video that Uber Butler had made about 2 years previously. He was a guy who worked at Vice, and he managed to fake a fashion brand into Fashion Week by getting people to talk about it. And so we had the idea of like, we're going to dress me up in ridiculous clothing. So we went to Primark, we bought like maternity trousers. Zach had like some shoes that he'd been given when he'd spent a night in jail for breaking into the EMA. So I was wearing jail shoes, maternity trousers. Like I had a rug on my sofa that we pinned in weird places. We then got like plastic packaging that you get in like parcels, the big pillow ones, and wrapped them around my neck like some sort of like royal ruff. And we just went to Fashion Week, and we got Coco, who was actually still working with me at the time, to like trigger the flash on her camera and just shout my name. She's like, Max, over here. And like immediately loads of photographers like ran over, started taking pictures, asking who I was. And then Zach pretended to be my manager. And it just kind of snowballed to the point where like we then sent those photos to the shows the next day, being like, we've got this new hot model. He's making a real scene. Like, you should get him into your shows. We got invited to shows. We got invited to after parties. And we made this video documenting this process. Well, Zach did post it on his channel. And I remember talking to my dad before it went live saying, I'll be really happy if I get 1,000 subscribers out of this video. And my dad was like, just be careful. You don't know. Nothing could happen. It's okay. And almost immediately, when the video went out, it just exploded in a way that I haven't seen a video do like that.
Yeah, like there's like 30 million views or something now. Like,
but it was and so I went from 1,800 subscribers to 80,000 subscribers in about 4 days.
Because he linked your channel and
because my channel was linked, and I was a big part of the video.
Yeah.
And so I guess people were like, oh yeah,
this guy seems cool.
Check this guy out. They went from 30,000 subscribers to 300,000 subscribers in 5 days, which was just mad. And so what I quite like is Zach is still like probably one of my best mates, and we are both really kind of proud of the fact that our career trajectory is both kind of like really entwined in the sense that we both kind of blew up with the same video at the same time. And so from there, I realized, oh, okay, I've suddenly got this audience. Yeah. And I didn't do anything different. I just went back to making the same street interviews. And like, oh, great, I've got now more people are watching, but let's just do street interviews again. And that was really stupid.
What was it about that video that you think hit it off so well?
The storytelling is phenomenal from Zach. Like the edit that he made is absolutely incredible. I think as well, it's the victim of the prank is the fashion industry. And I think that's a communal shared victim that people kind of don't feel too sorry about. A lot of the videos I'm always thinking, okay, is this punching up or is this punching down? And I think it's really important to think about that when you are doing the kind of content that I make, because otherwise it can very quickly feel quite vindictive or just not very nice. I genuinely don't know. I don't know why that video has done so well. It's just one that just...
And so how did it feel seeing the numbers climb on that video? What was yours and like Zach's reaction? Were you like on the phone to be like, oh my God,
it was dangerously addictive.
Yeah.
It was like, I remember like genuinely just like the cat, the rat in the experiment where like clicking for more food. Like I was just refreshing YouTube Studio every 2 minutes, just watching the numbers. And it was incredibly exciting and awesome, but then it fades so quickly, like a week later, and you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
I'm just going to make the same stuff that I have always done.
And then, so like while you were there in Fashion Week doing sort of holding like your haughty pose and stuff, what was going through your mind? Like how was that for you?
I was terrified. I was genuinely terrified because I was a very good student at school. I always did what I was told. Like I got my homework in on time. This idea of kind of breaking the mold and doing something a bit cheeky or naughty was something that was like completely alien to me. But I was determined to do it for that video because I knew the opportunity it would bring by being on Zach and Jay's channel. So I was pushing myself outside my comfort zone massively. Also, the costume that we had made, we put together with safety pins, and one of the safety pins had come undone whilst we were filming, and so I was generally had a safety pin in my back, so one of them was like stuck in me, and so I was in quite a lot of pain. So the faces of just kind of like total disdain towards everyone was purely because I was in quite a lot of pain. So I think I was like, let's just get this over and done with. It's nearly done. It's nearly over. Okay. And I've now come to view this feeling of like, I call it the 10 seconds of terror. And on the other side of 10 seconds of terror is something that's really exciting and really fun, and something that you couldn't possibly imagine. So I always think if I'm doing less and less of these videos where I'm like pushing myself to go into extreme circumstances. But if I am ever in that scenario, I just think it's okay. 10 seconds of terror, it will be done soon.
Okay, so at this point, you've just exploded onto London Fashion Week. You've got your 80,000 subscribers. What happens next?
So that was in March 2019.
Yeah.
Then for the next year until March 2020, I just genuinely just kept making more street smart videos. I just went out and just interviewing again people on nights out or people at events. I went to the World Wife Carrying Championships and interviewed people there, and I moved more into like conventions.
Yeah.
That was my idea of like branching out. And then COVID hit, and I was a mess because I was like, my whole job revolves around me interviewing people.
So was the channel monetized at that point?
And the channel was monetized.
And that's
at this
how you were
point.
paying the bills? Or?
Yeah, a little bit of both between like still working at the pub and doing, but the channel was basically monetized at that point, and Coco was still working with me, and
like for free or for paid?
It was like we were sharing 50% of the channel each.
Okay.
Which I remember like looking back on it now, like seems mad, but I just wanted to do this, so I wasn't really thinking about like the split of it and how it was going to work. And so it was definitely not a big enough channel to be able to be like supporting two people's wages. So COVID hit, and I was like, what am I going to do? I can't interview people. It's my whole bread and butter. And that's when I started to make different types of videos. So there was a stock photo in my flat that it was in a frame that I'd been bought. I'd never bothered to change out the stock photo. And so I thought, and I'd never changed. So this woman had become like part of my flat for 2 years because I'd been too lazy to change her out for a photo of my family or whatever. And so I remember sitting there like in lockdown bored. I was like, I wonder who she is. I'd love to talk to her. That'd be cool. So I then spent this like 3-part series of like trying to find the woman from the stock photo. And initially I thought it was going to be like I thought it was going to be a really easy video. I thought I was going to put it in, reverse image search it. She's going to be a popular model, reach out to her, see if I could talk to her. But it ended up being this like real goose chase. Like I was going, it took me 6 weeks by talking to experts and stock photography experts and like data analysts and people who worked in archives at Getty Images. And it's like, do you know who this person is? Do you know the style? And I eventually found this model, and people really enjoyed that series. And I realized, okay, maybe I can do more storytelling bits rather than just shoving a microphone in front of someone's face and trying to get them to say something silly. And that's where, so COVID was kind of a blessing and was the best thing that could have happened. But although I totally lost my mind and was worried that it was the end of all YouTube, it meant that it forced myself to try a different angle of video making. And yeah.
Okay. And so presumably you're living at home at this point, working in the pub part-time, but pubs weren't really a thing.
No, I think I was furloughed. I can't remember. Had I left the pub at this point? I think I'd left the pub just before COVID. Yeah. I seem to remember. I remember thinking, okay, I've just got this situation where I can just about, make this work. I mean, I've also got to preface this as well. I knew that I would be okay if I failed as well. I've come from a background of immense privilege, and I knew that it will be okay, but I know that I need to work hard at this.
The insurance company's always there if you...
The insurance, exactly. I can go go do a few internships if needs be.
Yeah.
But if anything, that kind of like, that was a real driving force to make me really want to go and work harder for it.
Okay. So you start this foray into the world of then storytelling type videos. So what happened next? What was that?
I then, just since COVID, have just been steadily making more and more, and they're going bigger and bigger. And I've realized that with YouTube, you're often referred to as the guy or girl that does blank. So if people would come say hello in the street and they're with their mate, it would be, oh, you're the guy that does X, Y, Z. And that would change like every 3 or 4 months.
Oh, okay.
So previously it was, oh, you're the guy that interviews posh people. And then I ran for London Mayor. And it was like, oh, you're the guy that ran for London Mayor. And I realized it's important that I think you change what that thing that people are referring to you as, not as frequently as possible, but it just showcases that you're still in people's consciousness. I mean, then there's a whole kind of deeper conversation about like relevancy and how important is relevancy. And blah, blah, blah.
That was what I was going to ask you about.
Yeah. But so for me, it was just, I kind of did more and more things and was going they were kind of getting slightly closer to the bone in terms of like their feasibility or how difficult they were, or like, for example, running for London Mayor.
Yeah. What was the deal with that? Like,
the BBC released a list of the candidates they thought they were going to run. And at the bottom, it said what you needed to do in order to run. And that included, and only needed 2 things: a £10,000 deposit that you got back if you got 5% of the vote, which, for context, only 3 parties got back almost every single election. So Labour, Conservative, and the Lib Dems. No, the Greens. I don't think the Lib Dem get back their deposit.
Wow,
So like, it's incredibly difficult to get your deposit back. Yeah. So you just need a £10,000 deposit, and to get 2 signatures from each borough of registered voters. Okay. So you go to so that's 66 signatures. So that's all you need. And I remember I put it into a mate's group chat, and one of my friends just went, "You won't run for London Mayor." I was like, maybe I could. Maybe I could do this. And then, so I then realized the feasibility of this thing. It was possible. I applied. I had just enough money. I thought, if I make 6 or 7 videos out of this, I'll probably make my money back. So I applied, and then I realized, I need a story here. I need something that is entertaining, because it's not going to be funny for the 6 weeks or 7 weeks of the campaign if you're just the YouTuber that's running for London Mayor. And then I was given the gift of Lawrence Fox, who was another candidate who was running, who also went to the same school as me, not the same time. But he had no experience in politics, but he had £5 million in backing.
Oh,
and I just thought, amazing. What happens if you just have two posh boys who have no history of politics, if they just run against each other? And he was running on a quite a controversial ticket of one of he was kind of going for a relatively a right wing left leaning kind of thing. And I just thought, what was interesting is that I then had an opportunity. He was an easy person to make content about. Yeah. Because he was very polemic. He was very kind of in the media a lot for doing crazy things or saying silly things. And so I thought, okay, if I run against him, it will be... What do
you mean by run against him?
I just needed...
You needed a baddie in the story.
I needed a baddie in the story.
Okay, fine.
And so it was just kind of like an opportunity to do that. And so that's what I did. I challenged him to debates, and for him, it wasn't a good look that I was constantly cropping up, because he was running on a serious ticket. My number one policy point was don't vote for me. And I was, because I wanted to engage. I also wanted to engage young people to vote, generally not for me, but for anybody. Yeah. Because I think we had a lot of politicians saying it's very important to vote, guys. Always use your vote. But normally, if you're a young person like this, so I don't care what you've got to say. And so just having a horse in the race hopefully was going to galvanize more young people to vote. And not for me. And I released my manifesto, which included things like, we have many parks in London, but no Jurassic Parks. I'm going to change that. I wanted to carpet the M25 to make it the smoothest road in the world. So I just came up with, I sat down with some mates in the pub just to write my manifesto. And I made a 6-7 parts series about that. What was really funny at one point is that Lawrence Fox his campaign team were obviously paying for YouTube advertising, and the YouTube algorithm was just putting his YouTube advertising in front of my videos. So therefore, he was inadvertently paying for my campaign.
Yeah.
So I then did a video where I said thank you to him and his top donor by dressing up in a Deliveroo outfit, buying a column the Caterpillar, and delivering a cake and a card to their offices, and like essentially breaking in and pretending to be a delivery driver. And it just kind of like stirred this pot of the political world, I guess. I wasn't doing anything particularly grand but it's just fun.
What was your, this is going to sound somewhat pretentious, but what was your creative process in making these 7 videos? What are you looking out for? How do you come up with the ideas?
I was just looking for opportunities.
What was the,
So I realized quite quickly, so I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but I always had a knack of finding out where Laurence Fox was. And there was a reason for this. So initially, I got told by a friend of mine who's a journalist that he was going to be doing this big unveiling of a bus to launch his campaign. And so then I thought, okay, he's doing this big launch of a bus. What could I do? Okay, political buses have got kind of a history in our political discourse. Why don't I wrap my car in the words, "Don't believe everything you read on a bus," and just tail him as he drives through London on his open top bus? And so I did this the first time round, and it was quite funny. And Laurence Fox was a bit annoyed at me, but I found out where he was because a friend of mine was a journalist. And then it was very clear that his party that he was running, I think they're called the Reclaim Party, they were then only sending press releases to favourable media outlets that they trusted and they knew. But I still managed to find out where he was every single time, because there may or may not have been a mole who was working in his party who didn't enjoy working in his party. So I thought, right, let's just send Max the location of the information and just do what you like. And so it was, the creative process was generally just trying to take advantage of opportunities that I saw. And so then I saw that he was getting very upset. Laurence Fox was getting very upset that Sadiq Khan wouldn't debate him, because he said, we're both candidates in this race, like, debate me, Sadiq Khan. And Sadiq Khan said, no, I'm only debating proper candidates.
Yeah.
So Laurence Fox got very upset. It's like, that's ridiculous. You need to debate me. So I then said, well, right, Laurence, we need to have a debate. We're both candidates. At that point, we were both polling 1% in the polls. So I was like, Laurence, we need to have a debate. Come on, let's do a debate. And I got him on the phone to say, yes, let's have a debate. And then he didn't turn up to the debate.
Oh.
I hosted it outside of his office to make it as easy for him. And so I was just watching what the mainstream political kind of juggernauts were doing against each other, and then just kind of doing the same thing with Laurence Fox.
And so were you releasing a video sort of each week of the campaign?
I was trying to make them every week, but it was quite difficult to come up with weekly things about Laurence. And then a lot of the time it was just about what it's like running for a political position in this country. And so I had a great time where the BBC and all the major broadcasters, their political ads are called every single candidate. Of course, they do their due diligence and talk to them. We were speaking to the head of BBC London, the political journalist at BBC London. She said, so why do you think you'd make a good London mayor? And I said, I wouldn't. And it completely floored her. Like, she was like, well, then why are you running? Yeah. It's like, so I want to get more young people to vote. And she couldn't, like, I could tell that it wasn't her favorite interview that she'd done that day, because I was just being quite irritating to interview. And so a lot of the process was just kind of like talking to people and documenting that process.
And so to take the example of the driving behind the bus with "Don't believe everything you read on a bus," how does that then turn into a YouTube video? What is the process of doing a thing and then turning it into a video that does really well look like?
So I think that it's all story. You've got to have like set out your why at the very beginning. Then you've got to set out I think my audience really enjoys the feeling that they're doing this whole thing with me. Yeah. So I can show the process of how I'm actually making the video in the video. So I think once I normally start with the big ending. So like I'll get the footage of me going behind the bus and me talking to Laurence Fox and him getting annoyed and his security team they tried to, at one point I was reversing and they tried to stand in front of my car, like at the back of my car to stop me from reversing. I'm just like gently nudged them further and further back. So I got that footage and then it's like, okay, I put that in the timeline. I said, right, I need the intro or the hook. The hook, I call it hook or the exposition. The hook, then the exposition.
What's an exposition?
Exposition, explaining a little bit more about why you're doing it, how you're going to do it, and then it's normally the thing. And I just kind of, it normally takes about 3 or 4 days to edit a video if I know exactly what the beats are. So normally the hook is a flashy 30-second like best bits. Then it's me. We call it the kitchen shot. So I sit in my kitchen with my tripod and I'm like, so I need to do this today, and this is going to involve doing this, this, and this, and then it's like that process.
And so you're sort of faking the footage as if you were doing it at the time, or
some of it is
like presumably when you wrap the car, you might as well film that process.
I'm filming that. Yeah, I'm filming that, the wrapping of the process, the wrapping of the car, but about 50% of the time when like I'm in the kitchen talking to camera, about half of it is the time when I was actually like thinking about it and I just rolled.
Okay.
But often there are extra bits that I didn't explain well enough when I did it originally that I need to add to get a little bit more clarity in what I'm trying to say. So it's just a lot.
So you're taking people through this process, and at the end of it, you get a video.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about like titles and thumbnails and all that jazz?
At that point, I wasn't. At that point, I was classically doing the classic, like, okay, upload in 15 minutes, let's make a thumbnail. Okay, done. That has changed a lot recently, since I've kind of built out a team. And by a team, I said one person.
Yeah.
It's just me and my kind of producer, editor, Aziz, who is just an extra me, basically. So we work on the video together. We actually, a lot of the time, we start we make the video at different ends and meet in the middle. So I'll normally start at the end, he starts at the beginning, we'll just meet in the middle. Now we're super driven on like titles and thumbnails and understanding what works. And I very luckily am part of a Discord group of creators that every Thursday we meet, and we have an hour and a half where we can each brings like a topic to discuss, and that can be whether like roasting thumbnails or roasting titles or content ideas. And it's got me much better at understanding how YouTube works and understanding that the algorithm is just people. And that's what I find really fascinating. That changed my perspective massively when someone says, oh, the algorithm hates me, or the video's been killed by the algorithm. It's like, no, it's been killed because people aren't watching it, or people don't want to watch it to the end. So YouTube's like, this is not one that the audience is going to like. And so, if we want to get very nerdy and talk about like CTR and AVD and things like that, then I do think about that a lot. And I'm editing a lot of the time to music. So I use classical music as kind of exclusive my USP, and classical music is fantastic because it has a beginning, middle, and end in the pieces. So if it's like so let's say it's a 10-minute video, there's 4 2.5 minute sections where I find pieces of music, and they will come to their own natural crescendo, and then we'll go to black screen, and that's the start of the next chapter. So we're thinking a lot of like, okay, let's keep let's hold the hand of the viewer all the way through this and try and tell the best story.
So COVID happens, you've got, and then you get this Zach and Jay Fashion Week thing. Now you've got your 80,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Well, what was the growth of the channel like, and what were the sort of main things that really made things take off?
So I went from, so I got 80,000 subscribers in March 2019, and until November 2021. So that is 2.5 years.
2.5 years. Yeah.
2.5 years. I went from 80,000 subscribers to 400,000 subscribers, right, in 2.5 years. And in November 2021, I hired Aziz. And from November 2021 to now, which we are in September 2022, so 10 months, we're on 1.4 million.
So there's a lot of exponential growth.
Yeah, so it suddenly just went boom. And that's because I think I had just genuinely somebody to talk to, and somebody to just, is this a good idea? Somebody to edit the videos with, just generally just sharing the successes and the failures with somebody else was so much like more enjoyable than like anything I'd done previously.
Yeah.
And it showcased in the like in my Social Blade. If you don't know what Social Blade is, you can check your numbers and that kind of thing. Or your audience will definitely know what Social Blade is. You can see like it's just like a massive spike, almost like 2 weeks after I hired Aziz. And so that made me realize, okay, I can make this thing that I'm doing, but with a team, not necessarily a massive team, but like 2 or 3 people. I'm really interested in the idea of just having a small team who can just help me create these videos.
Yeah, I think it was exactly the same for me. So I first got an editor, Christian, who was our first, I guess, employee, to about 2.5 years into my YouTube journey. So like late 2019. And there was an immediate spike in everything on the channel because now all of a sudden I didn't have to do the editing, which meant I could spend more time making videos, and we released courses and revenue skyrocketed, and then we were able to build more of a team around it. And I think that's like when you get to that point where you can then start working with someone, even if it's a part-time thing, even if you're just sort of outsourcing a bit of editing here and there to a friend, it's just completely changes the game.
Absolutely. And I think I'm still very scared of hiring someone else as well, because I'm not very good with like committing to be like, okay, this is a good idea. Even with like Aziz, not necessarily it was about Aziz, but I was trying to find an editor for like 9 months because I was like, this person needs to be like absolutely perfect. They need to be another version of me and know exactly my thought process. And then I realized that just comes by working together over long periods of time. And so I've got someone who's starting in 2 weeks' time to help make videos for China. I've got a platform on China that does quite well, an audience over there, which is cool. And so it's just kind of building a team and working together.
So how do you make money these days?
I make money from so ad revenue, which like since November 2021, and the video is doing really well. Ad revenue kind of changes quite a lot, but that's kind of like 10 to 20 grand a month. But that almost all goes into my wage, Aziz's wage, and also just the cost of the videos. Like as we're doing more and more, the videos are just getting really expensive. Like this, there's currently a treasure hunt on to find a $100,000 fish. That was not cheap, as you can imagine. So, and then the other comes from brand deals as well, and that rate changes and fluctuates as the videos do better because they look at your kind of average for the last 5 videos. And then I do stand up as well. So I've just done. I did a tour last year, stand up tour. I've just been to the Edinburgh Fringe for a month. I'm doing the London Palladium in November with my stand up show. And
have you got spare tickets for that?
Yeah, so we've still got about 200 tickets left.
Amazing!
Please come on down.
We should do a team trip.
Yes, please do.
That'll be sick. Yeah, let's do that. That'll be fun.
Please do come down. And that's like that. Stand up isn't something that makes a huge amount of money. Something that I found really interestingly whilst actually doing it, because there are so many people that are taking like slices of the pie. So yeah, mainly it comes from just brand deals and ad revenue. But I'm now looking more to diversify by watching a lot of your stuff actually, and like this needs to, although my whole niche is the silly guy doing silly things, that doesn't mean that I can't also make a business, and so hence the Silly Company is being born.
It's called the Silly Company.
The Silly Company.
I love it. That's good. It's like the boring company.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I often worry about is, what does my career look like when I'm 40 or 50? Am I still going to be a YouTuber giving productivity advice?
Yeah.
I imagine if I were you, I'd be even more worried.
Yeah.
What is that like for you?
I'm not even worried about 40, 50. I'm worried about the next 6 months. Like, I think that, and this is why I ventured into different areas like stand-up, is because I want to be the most valuable entertainer that I can be. So I want to have a lot of strings to my bow with YouTube. Essentially, YouTube is what I do right now. It's just storytelling. And that I think will be, I think that's very valuable regardless what platform you're on. Best movies, best TV shows, best YouTube videos are purely just being able to tell a story really, really well.
Yep.
So I think that I've got value in there. Stand up as well, being able to kind of talk to people on a large stage and in front of lots of people, I think is a skill that I have. So I don't know whether I'll be making YouTube videos, and I don't know whether it's going to be large, pranky, stunty vids. But I hope that I will have some value within the entertainment world because of the experience I have with just telling stories.
And I guess, so is your model that as long as you can make a living doing the thing that you love, which is entertaining people, then you're happy? You aren't chasing big revenue numbers and all that shit? Or
no, yes and no. Like, I think that I realized very quickly when I hit 1 million subscribers that chasing quantitative goals is a very dangerous game, because you hit those numbers, if you ever do hit those numbers, and you then do a big sigh and they're like, oh, okay. Now what? I don't think I'm particularly money orientated. I don't think that I'm like saving, like collecting the pennies just to make sure that I hit a certain revenue number. I think at the moment it's just being able to do things that people don't think are possible. So I've got a few mad video ideas that I would just be happy if I could make them. Like I want to water ski behind a cruise ship. Nice. And I was telling this to my mechanic who was doing my MOT, and like first of all that was like blew his mind, like the idea that you could be a YouTuber, but he was like, oh mate, that sounds amazing, oh yeah, that's awesome. And then there was a woman who was also getting her car serviced when I told him about the idea to get a water ski behind a cruise ship. She was weirdly also called Karen. She said, oh, you'll never do that, no, you can't do that. And just this random woman telling me I can't do this has made me like, I will do this for the next 5 years. I'm sure I'm going to be able to water ski behind a cruise ship. So I think for me at the moment, it's just being able to. Do you know what, Ali? I was listening to your episode with Marquez.
Yeah.
And before I got here, and you asked the same question, and I remember thinking on the tube, I don't know what the answer is to that question. I generally don't know whether I'm doing this for monetary value, whether I'm doing this for kind of quote unquote fame or acclaim. And I also don't know whether I'm making, this is probably quite a detrimental thing to be thinking about, but I don't know whether I'm making a video that I know is going to do really well, or like is a big vid. I don't know whether I'm excited because I'm really excited to make this video, or I'm excited because I know it's going to do really well. I still haven't come to terms with which one is winning in that kind of angel versus devil on my shoulder.
Oh, mate. So I was having a chat to a YouTuber who I met over the weekend who has like 20 million subscribers. And I asked this question of like, how do you balance kind of education value of the video with the money, with growth? And he was like, mate, it changes depending on the day of the week. And I was like, oh, that's reassuring because I definitely have that. And even a guy with 20 million subscribers, he was like, yeah, this is, it depends how I'm feeling, depends on if I've had enough sleep, depends on like, sometimes I'm very money motivated, sometimes very status motivated, sometimes I just really want to make a really good video. And that it changes every day. And that was so refreshing.
That is like, refreshing actually.
Because I was just like, I feel like surely there must be an answer to this. And everyone I've asked is always like, I mean, Marquez's thing was very much like, I just want to make a really good video.
Yeah.
I was like, that sounds simple enough. I feel like my own motivations are a bit more dodgy, where it's like, to what extent do I want to be a inspirational teacher to people because I want the status versus because I actually think it's
absolutely
all of those things.
No,
yeah.
I find it quite hard to comprehend that people, like when Marco says that there are people who actually are that kind of like vindicated in their own self-belief that is all they're making the videos for, is because they just want to make a good video.
Yeah.
I do sometimes I like going back and watching videos of mine from like 2 years ago of like experiences that I've had and be like, oh, that was a really fun time, or I enjoyed that was a fun video, I liked watching that video. And so I find myself sometimes creepy into a world of like, I'm making this video because I know it's going to do really, really well. And
how do you feel about the process when I generally find when I'm chasing numbers, it feels bad and I get burnt out very easily.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And how have you stopped chasing numbers, Ali?
I do journaling sessions basically every month where I'm just like, right, where I have to reaffirm to myself that chasing numbers is not the thing that I actually want to do. Because it's just so easy. Like you see the numbers just there and just like, oh, fuck, hey, this was an 8 out of 10 video. Damn, view to subscriber ratio is going down. God, like Max's videos are doing really well. Yes, Theory's doing well. And it's just the whole comparison trap and then it's like, okay, no, hang on, let's take a step back, do a lot of journaling, write 5 pages about why I'm doing this thing and why this is good and why I don't need to worry about money and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. No,
which lends at the conclusion of, make videos you want to make. Don't make videos to chase numbers.
No, absolutely. And I think that I'm now, as of recording this podcast right now, I'm probably in a bit of a vulnerable position because I've just done stand-up for 6 weeks and I haven't posted on the channel for 6 weeks. And so I've seen things are starting to dip again. And I'm now like, oh no, this is the moment where it all goes bad. And I post a video that people don't like, or I'm doing it just for the sake of posting a video because I think it's going to do really, really well. What I have learned that is really kind of refreshing is that the more that I make like fun videos or videos that I enjoy, the more fun video ideas that I get in my mind and the more I make them. So it's kind of like this positive cycle and this negative cycle.
Yeah.
So I don't have those processes, I think, in place because I think I'm probably arrogant enough. I'm 27 and naive. Oh, it's fine. When I have kind of like a really low week, then I'll just get through it. I'll get out the other side and it'll be fine. But that's probably quite a bad kind of thought process to be going into. I do therapy, which that was one of the first things that I bought with some YouTube money was like therapy,
and
it is very useful. But then it all boils down to like ideas of like self-esteem.
Yep.
And that is much harder because you can talk about that. And I know I'm like the coach. I know all of the processes. I'm now going to therapy, knowing exactly the questions that my therapist is going to ask me. And I know the same response I'm going to get. And I know the bit where he's going to get me to cry. And then I tell him off because I'm like, you're just doing that because you want me to cry. So I kind of got to a kind of an impasse where I know the processes. I know the things that make me feel bad when it comes to like negative thoughts when it comes to video making. Because it's all about self-esteem and like
what other things?
Just wanting to be like liked, I think, and wanting to be like have videos that do really well and like have big numbers. But the goalposts just move daily. Like I looked at Aziz and I looked at our goals that we set at the beginning of 2022, and that was to hit 800,000 subscribers. We were on 500,000 at that point, and we're now on 1.4 million. And we haven't taken a step back. Well, I haven't taken a step back to think like, okay, it's fine. We've more than tripled our goal for this year. I'm not thinking, can we hit 2 million by the end of the year? That's those noises, Ali. Is you're realizing like this guy needs some help.
No, I'm thinking, mate. I know the feeling. Like I'm thinking that like it's so nice hearing you speak about exactly the same thoughts that go through my mind. I think I have been very careful / like to try my very best not to set any kind of quantitative goal. At least not a goal that's outside of my control. So I might have a goal of like one or two videos a week because that's in my control. But anything around like a subscriber count, view count, I've found whenever I have a goal like that, it is net negative for me. And so how do I control the things I can control and only set goals that are like that? To which someone might be like, oh, but that's not ambitious. If you set a big, hairy, audacious goal, then you're more likely to hit it. And I'm like, yeah, probably.
But go back to the conversation you had with Marquez. He talked about like chasing goals. Like every year he wants to go like hit his goals hard or chase his goals. How do you feel about that kind of that idea of like it's so very goal oriented and goal driven? Because when you reach goals, like I was talking to a YouTuber whose goal was to hit 10 million subscribers, and he did it, and his growth was enormous. And he was like, okay, well now what? I've done it. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't feel particularly different. I don't feel fantastic. And there's this like hedonic adaptation that I'm really interested in, because now it just looks like two YouTubers that people watch, just kind of like not complaining, but oh God, this is so hard that we've
so hard, isn't it? It was like 1.4 million instead of 800,000. God.
And so then I catch myself and like, okay, don't be such an ungrateful idiot.
Yeah.
About the whole thing. So it's constantly trying to kind of.
So just on that note, Darren Brown's book Happy is really good. It's stoicism and happiness and stuff. In it, he talks about the kind of conundrum of being a celebrity, in that there are all sorts of negatives associated with it, but you're never allowed to talk about it because you have to be just grateful. And, oh my God, like thank you so much to the fans. It's all of that stuff. And the instant, like in a public forum, you talk about the negatives, suddenly the public turns against you because of like, of course, you've ended up in this privileged position, etc. So I appreciate you actually having the courage to talk about it. This is going to get clipped up. We don't want to get cancelled.
Absolutely slamming on it. It's going to be a problem. Yeah.
The way that I sort of think about it is, I ask myself the question of like, you know, if I had 100 million in the bank, how would I be spending my time? And the answer is, I'd be making videos about cool shit that I've learned, so I can teach it to other people and document the process. And I'm like, cool. Do I need 100 million in the bank to do that? No, I could just do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't I just do that? I'm like, oh, well, I want numbers to go up. I want to be more liked. I want to get more accolades. But it's like, there was another really great, from Alex Hormozy, actually, one of the jacked guys I was telling you about. He had a really good quote. He said that he realized that when he was 20, he wanted to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
But when he was a millionaire, he wanted to be 20. And so why is he wasting all his time like grinding and not enjoying the process when he just want to go back, or going to want to go back to the start when he gets to the destination? And so I do genuinely think about that a lot. And I think I wrote it in my like journal yesterday or something. Just this idea of just making sure that whatever I'm doing, I am taking the time to enjoy the process and not being too goal oriented, because I think being too goal oriented in a way takes your eye off of the actual process. Yes.
I think just whilst you were talking that, I think my one, if I'm being totally truthful, it is all accolade driven. I think at the moment is that's what I want. I want to be able to say that I've done X, Y, Z, but I don't know who I'm like want to say it to. when there was I did my stand-up tour. Someone said, "Oh, what do you want to do now?" I said, "I want to do the London Palladium, because that as a venue is one that I used to grow up watching, like Jack D and people like comedians like that doing their specials at the London Palladium, and so much so that I've rather kind of arrogantly, is that the word? I've asked the London Palladium who the youngest person who's ever done their own stand-up special at the London Palladium, and I'm waiting to hear back because there's something in me that wants me to be the youngest person ever to have done it, which is a really toxic way of thinking about things, I think. But I think I am all still very much accolade driven at the moment, which I don't know whether that's a positive or a negative thing, but I think at the moment that's just how I am.
So there's a book I'm reading at the moment called The Second Mountain.
Okay.
A chap called David Brooks. Its thesis is basically that in life there are two mountains. The first mountain is the mountain of success and status and happiness and being accolade driven and all that kind of stuff. And usually we're on that model when we're young, that mountain. And then one of three things happens. Either you get to the summit and you realize, hang on, is this it? Or you get knocked off the mountain because someone dies and you're like, shit. Or you get knocked off the mountain because of a health problem and you're like, oh my God, like I have a second chance at life. And in each of those three situations, you realize there is a second mountain. And that's the second mountain, which is more about service. It's more about joy. Instead of it being like, hey, I want to be cool and have freedom and stuff, which is very much what I optimized for the first mountain. That's more about, I want to commit myself to a cause. I want to really invest in relationships. I want to invest in my local community. I want to have a family. And that is where you experience true joy as the second mountain. Whereas the first mountain is more about like that short-term hedonism and status games that we all play.
Do you think that's an age-based mountain?
Yeah, I think
hiking situation.
there seems to definitely, like from people I know who have had lots of success in life, definitely as they've gotten older, especially as they've had kids, it's like an immediate thing that takes them onto the second mountain. But what I guess I was trying to get from the book and is like he talks about if you recognize yourself as being on the first mountain, which I do, how do you then recognize that and actually shift to the second mountain, knowing that like the pursuit of status and accolades and stuff is hollow and empty at the end of the day. And just like basically everyone who's done it says that that's true. And so it's like what I'm trying to do is figure out, okay, how can I short circuit my desire for status and accolades and stuff and just move to second mountain mode sooner rather than later, so that I feel less kind of anxious around, am I going to be relevant 5 years from now, or is my YouTube channel growing fast enough? Haven't figured it out. But
there was a great, on a slight tangent, I think Colin and Samir told this story of Aziz Ansari meeting Frank Ocean at an awards ceremony. And Aziz Ansari went to Frank Ocean and was like, man, how'd you do it? Like, you just come along, you just make awesome albums, and then you dip for like 5 years and we don't hear from you, and then you just come up and make another banger album. How'd you do it? And Frank Ocean just said, I just make less money. And Aziz was like, oh my God, that's so true. Like you're doing it because you're not turning around and saying yes to a huge check that's coming from somebody else. And that really resonated. That story really resonates with me. So like, yeah, actually that is true. Like, how do you become somebody that is very enviable from everybody else? Well, you just make less money than everyone else.
There's a book called Finite and Infinite Games, which is sort of big in the sort of business tech bro scene. But basically it starts off with the idea that there are some games that are finite games that have an ending, and there are some games that are infinite games where the objective is to continue playing the game. So something like Minecraft is an infinite game. There's no real point score. Like you just play it because it bounces, like you build a Lego thing because it's fun. But something like Fortnite is a very finite game where there's a scoreboard and you have to win at the end of the thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of got me thinking that like in life there are finite games. A game in the game of I want to get the 1 million subscriber plaque is a finite game. Like there is an ending. But the infinite game of like I'm doing the thing I love and making a living doing it, that's the sort of thing that we both want to just actually be able to continue doing. And so if you're at the point where you genuinely are playing your infinite game, which is you get to do the thing you love and you get to make a living doing it, the only goal that it then therefore makes sense to have is the goal of being able to continue doing the thing. And so the way I think about this is that like if my goals are like revenue or like more big numbers and stuff, like I'm already doing the thing. I'm already like doing what I love and making money from it. So why don't I set my goals to be like, how do I make sure this is sustainable over a 30-year time horizon? rather than potentially neglecting actually making decent content for the sake of over monetizing, for the sake of a course, or for the sake of a brand deal. Or short-term money decisions tend to be finite gamey, I found. And whereas the more I'm actually doing the thing I love and producing content I'm proud of and don't really care about the money tends to be more infinite gamey.
There's the idea that as soon, like, people often find that, let's say people have hobbies, as soon as they start being paid to do their hobbies, they start to not enjoy it.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on that? If your whole idea is to make videos and enjoy making videos?
Honestly, that's a really good question. The way I square that is by thinking, and I have this literally as like an affirmation that I've written in my freaking bullet journal because I was dabbling with that the other day. What does it say? Let me see if I can get it like word for word. I don't care about numbers. I just do my thing and my amazing team takes care of the rest. So it's like in my dream world, the only thing I'd be thinking about is how do I learn cool things and teach those to people? And the fact that I now have a team means that they can worry about the monetization side of the equation. And so I'm thinking that if I can just separate those two things out, like the creative from the commercial, then, and actually a lot of companies have a creative arm and a commercial arm because those two things don't really work nicely together. And if I can do that in my life, then that's a dream.
Okay. I need to, can I have your team, please?
Yes.
Fantastic.
We can definitely help you out.
Yeah.
Angus has hopped on so many calls with other creative friends and stuff to talk through the process of how we're trying to get there. One of the things I have in my bucket list is stand-up comedy set.
Ah, yes.
What's the deal with stand-up comedy? How does one get started if one is interested in the thing?
That sounds like the beginning of a stand-up. So what's the deal with stand-up comedy?
Good shout.
Good shout. It's very meta. I'm not sure how the pubs and clubs would enjoy that. Stand-up comedy is an incredibly rewarding experience, but it's also one of the most terrifying experiences you can do. And Rob Beckett, the comedian, gave some incredible advice about how to get started in stand-up comedy. And he said, imagine you're starting a 9-to-5 job in an office. You go in on the Monday on your first day, and by Friday, you kind of know what you're doing. You kind of know who the people are. You know what your job is. Stand-up comedy is exactly the same thing, but you're just going to work 5 minutes at a time. So it takes so much longer to be comfortable on stage, to know what you're doing, to know where your strengths and where your weaknesses are. And I genuinely think that with stand-up comedy, it is a case of just doing it, and it is a world where it's the most you have to do it on the job that you can possibly do. I don't think you can do much planning, or you can write jokes, but like jokes that you write in your room will genuinely, I found, will have the opposite effect on stage. Jokes that you don't think are funny will be really funny on stage, and jokes you think are really good are rubbish on stage.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky that I had a ready-made audience who were kind of happy to be kind of guinea pigs for me for like 6 months. I was just doing loads of work in progress shows in front of like 30 people. I then very luckily found a great team again of producers and directors, a director who works with Joe Lycett on all of his stuff, as well as having done the Dan and Phil World Tour like 5 or 6 years ago. And so when I said I want to make an hour-long show, he came on board and we wrote this show essentially together, and he really supported me on that. And he's absolutely amazing because he understands YouTube, he understands what I was good at, understands what my audience wants when they come to a live show, but also merges that with stand-up and the way that the traditional comedy world works. So if you're going to do it, I think just go to an open mic night where no one knows who you are and do 5 minutes and just stand on stage. It will be bad.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
People might not laugh, but as long as you've got that first one out the way early doors, then I think it's all okay. And then someone also said to me, people, when they go to comedy, they want to feel like that they're being taken care of by the person on stage. So being a good stand-up comedian is just being able to be on stage and seem totally relaxed, and everybody else feeling totally relaxed because they're like, oh, okay, this guy or gal knows what they're doing. That's fine. We can just enjoy the jokes. Whereas if you come on stage and almost immediately someone picks up the mic and they are messing around with the cable, the audience is immediately like, oh God, I really hope this is okay. And then as soon as the audience are in that position, you've lost. Like they have already not turned against you, but they're not in a position where they're going to be comfortable enough to laugh. So, Ali, the answer is do it. Just go and do it. And don't worry about how well it goes, because it will go badly. And when it goes badly, it's a great story.
Yeah, it's either a good time or it's a good story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we do a YouTube collab I do a stand-up thingy and you're like my supporter or something?
Yeah, nice. Absolutely.
That'd be super fun.
Yeah.
And then part of the story can be this conversation we've just had where I'm like, so I've been interested in stand-up comedy for a while. And then you came with a podcast.
6 months ago, we had this conversation.
And that's like, Ali, you've just got to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, act 2 or whatever, however you do storytelling and content, which I've never done before, but we'll give it a go. That could be fun. How does one become funny?
That's a very good question. Comedy, I think there's a real structure to comedy. So comedy is specificity. So so I had a joke where I would go through my old notes on my phone, and I found that on my phone I'd written on Christmas Day 6 years ago, weirdly, Girls Aloud Jump, the song Jump by Girls Aloud. I'd just written on a note. I had no idea why I'd written it. So I had a bit in my show about when we write weird notes on our phones. And I realized when I was writing that the joke initially was something like, I wrote this and my family had tasked me with putting together a Christmas playlist, right? And I wrote Girls Aloud joke. My director said, no, make it really specific. Said, Uncle John tasked me with putting together a Christmas playlist. And so I chose Girls Aloud Jump. So that's much funnier. Whereas the concept of it isn't inherently that funny, but the specificity of Uncle John makes it funnier. So comedy is specificity, I've found. And I think that it's just, I don't really know. We think a lot about, it's also contradictions. So this is what we're thinking when Aziz and I are thinking about like titles, YouTube titles and concepts. It's taking something that everybody knows and doing the weirdest thing with it. So I got roadkill. What's the weirdest thing you can do to roadkill? Serve it to Michelin star chefs. Aziz, are there any other concept like ideas, video ideas we've had that's like really contradictory?
God, yeah. I mean, we always talk about that. Now I'm trying to think exactly.
We're richest man in the world for 7 minutes.
That was a great example of how like the richest man in the world idea was around for a long time. We basically were making the video, but then just adding that for 7 minutes and trying to work that into the video. Why would that be? Yeah. Made it because it just makes it way more intriguing. Because if you just I became richest man in the world, people think kind of like, well, it's probably not going to be real or like some joke thing. But for 7 minutes, it's like, okay, so what loophole did he find here? Well, why only 7 minutes? Like, that's what makes it great.
Oh yeah, I mean like, and the other one was I caught fish and chips from the world's most polluted river. So I ate fish and chips from the Thames. So that's a lot of like the comedy of the channel comes from just contradiction. So we're just constantly looking at like, okay, cameras, what's the weirdest thing you could do with a camera? Could you make a camera out of like a potato? Or and I think that's just content in general. I think on YouTube, it's like a lot of the time I look at my homepage and I realize, it's just kind of contradictions.
I just thought a really good one. Adult actors.
Oh yeah. So we did a video with adult actors, porn stars, if you will, and we got them to just act in a short film. So I hired porn stars to act in my short film, and so like that was because and it was great. They were great actors, and we had a great time, and it was a fun video to shoot. That.
How do you hire a porn star?
That was hard. That was the hardest part of that video, was trying to get in contact with like porn agents, because I don't know any, not in my current days. And so the best way was Instagram shout outs. That's where I find a lot of like my videos happen, because someone on Instagram knows someone. So it was a difficult day when I was like, hi, does anyone know any porn stars? Genuinely just like for a video, not that kind of video, but does anyone know any porn stars? And we got, some really, really cool people who came down and were great actors.
Yeah, I think the specificity point is really like thinking back to the start of our conversation when you did your impromptu bit about Greg and like the accent and the ketchup stain.
Ketchup stain.
Ketchup stain down the front. It's just the specificity is what makes that story like really funny.
Yeah. If you just talked about guy coming in, he'd spilt something on his shirt, that's not funny. But it's the more specific I think often is the funnier.
What about accents?
What about them?
So I another thing I have in my bucket list is learn how to do cool accents.
Okay.
And it's a thing that, so my singing teacher is like a professional Broadway actor or stuff and has actually studied accents and like can do like 50 of them with like actual like notation and shit. You've busted out like 4 or 5 so far. Like, is that just a thing that came naturally to you? How do you go about being able to do like impressions and stuff?
Accents, I can't give much more kind of insight other than just like I've just been doing them for a long, long time and just been like imitating people that I've seen on the telly ever since I was a kid. And I just, I really enjoy doing accents, and there are some that I can do, some that I can't do. Like some I can do well, some I can do really, really badly.
What are your top 3 favorite ones?
My favorite one, South African, I like doing. I like doing, what else do I like doing? I like doing really posh is really fun because I get to, in my kind of my life, I have met a lot of these people, and they just don't, their teeth just do not touch at all. They really just chat like this, and it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, wonderful to be here with Ali. Wonderful guy, actually. You must watch his content. But that just slightly goes into Boris. So, well, yeah, fantastic. So I like South African. I like posh. And just American is fun because American is just like quite difficult to do because you just very easily just go into Southern and Texan, which just becomes a stereotype. But I've just been doing them my whole life, really.
Nice. How does stand-up compare to the like doing stuff on video? Like, is it very different?
It's completely different. Yeah, it's completely different because you get that immediate feedback, number one, but also the kind of the way you present the content has to be completely different. So I've tried in the past, like putting on like 2 or 3 minute videos during my stand-up set, and it just feels like my director calls it, you're putting on videos for the kids. So it's like you're in class, and you're like, and now here we're going to watch this this video. So they've got to be really short, sharp, and just almost responding to whatever the joke was or whatever you just said on stage. Right. So it is very different. You've got to you're thinking much more about the idea of liveness than you are when you definitely don't think about that with YouTube. But comedy is at its best when the audience feels like it's the first time the comedian has ever said that. And so there are lots of times when you have audience interaction. That's why audience interaction works so well, is because the audience feels like, oh, this comedian is being really funny in the moment and is doing something that hasn't been rehearsed and hasn't been planned. And there are different tactics that you can use that you can almost fake that, or not fake that, or facilitate that feeling. So there's some audience interaction work that I do where I know there's only a very finite number of answers in which the question I'm asking the audience member can give me back. And so I've got in the chamber 3 or 4 different responses that I know work and know are funny.
So what's an example?
Oh God, you're putting me on the spot here. I'm just trying to think back to the show. Okay, right, yeah. This is going to slightly ruin the fact if you come to the Palladium show, but whatever. There's a bit in the show where I try and play a game of find a posh person in the audience, and I call it Guess Whom, like the board game. So what I do is I ask everyone to put their hands up in the air, and I say, right, keep your hands up in the air if you've ever referred to your parents as mummy or daddy, right? Okay, so everyone has their hands in the air. Some people like drop their hands, and then I will pretend on stage that there are more hands up on the right than on the left. So I'll say, oh, there are seemingly more posh people on the right than on the left. I know that a little bit like our political climate, and that feels very live, even though that's a joke that I've written previously. It always goes down really well because as a joke, it's not that funny, but it feels like it's the first time I've ever said it. Nice. So if you come to the Palladium show, keep your mouth shut.
What's it like working with a director to write and produce like a whole like hour-long show? Like how's that? Presumably it's very different to a 5-minute, 7-minute routine. Yeah,
you are looking at the flow of a show. So you want to come on stage and you want to be high energy at the beginning. You want to get into things immediately so the audience feel comfortable and they're like, okay, this guy's know what he's doing. But then over time, you can't sustain that energy the whole hour because your audience gets exhausted. So you've got to give them periods where they can relax and they can slightly almost turn off a little bit from what you're saying, because I think the difficulty with comedy, with hour-long comedy, is you're listening to someone talk for an hour, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do, to concentrate for an hour. And if it's like a certain type of comedian who are very, very clever comedy, you've got to be on the whole time as an audience member to realize, okay, this is going on. So we make the sections very clear. So the audience knows, okay, I'm in this bit for 7 minutes or 5 minutes. I can see the ending for this section. That helps a lot. Also giving time to put on a TV show for the kids, like just like letting them have a reset where they can watch something rather than having to listen to me all the time. So a lot of the time it's just formatting, and then it's just about writing those individual elements and thinking about what works and what doesn't. But mainly it's about the structure of a show. And so a lot of the time when we're doing previews, we're like swapping and changing. It's like, well, what if we put that bit after this bit, but that needs a connecting bit.
Yep.
But then that affects a callback that we've got later on the show. So it's very bitty.
Okay. And what are the economics of being a stand-up comedian?
Right.
Is it a reasonable path to make a living for a normal person?
I don't think it is, no. So you're going to have your producer. So these are the various people that will take a cut. So you've got producers who will take 12.5% to 20% of the show's takings. You've got a agent who will take 10 to 12.5%, 10 to 15% of the takings. So already you've lost about 25% of your earnings there. The venue then takes, normally, it depends, sometimes they do like a flat fee, but most of the time it's like a percentage. So they're taking 30 to 40%.
Oh, wow.
So before you even turn the microphone on, you're losing 60% to like costs. And then you've got the costs of like a director. If you've kind of had the money to do that, you've got PR that will kind of like hopefully get people to go to your show. I have just done a month at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in a venue that's about 75 seats. So it was a small venue, and I chose it to be a relatively small venue. I sold every seat out in that venue over the month, and I think which was great. But because the idea was that we wanted to make it a real scarcity of the tickets. Yeah. So we sold every ticket for the run, which is about 2,000 tickets over 30 days. And I think I took home about £2,500, and over the month, and that, like it's spent. We've spent like 6 months writing the show, and so I think, I mean, Fringe is a bad example because no one makes any money at the Fringe anyway. The Fringe, and that was one of the big issues this year, is because it's getting so incredibly expensive that it's so difficult for any new.
Wait, what do you mean it's getting expensive?
Accommodation is ludicrously expensive. It's kind of £1,500 to stay in Edinburgh for the month in like a tiny box room. Just the whole creation process of bringing your show to the Fringe is so expensive. So you're going to lose a lot of money. So my point is, you don't really start making large amounts of money until you're consistently doing 400-500 seater venues for the year. Okay. And I think that's going to be a problem, because going forward, also the shows that were selling out at the Edinburgh Fringe this year were all because they had platforms on social media, or because they were really big on Twitter, or they had a video that went viral recently, or they were YouTube audiences. And I think for the comedy industry, that's something that's going to be quite. I would be relatively worried if you're a comedian and you're not kind of engaging in somewhat in the social media side of things. I can understand why you wouldn't be, because it's like, well, hold on, no, I got into stand-up comedy because I want to be a stand-up comedian. What's this whole stuff, and now I need to be a content creator and do like silly TikTok dances. There's a real misconception about what it means to be a TikTok creator or an online creator. But yeah, the big comedians in the UK, like obviously taking away your Gervaises and your Joe Lysets, they're probably making good money, but everybody else is I don't think you're making huge, definitely not making generational money to kind of retire off.
It's so I've got a friend who is a musician, and we just recently got a record deal a couple of years ago, and he's just like, oh my god, they keep on saying I have to go on TikTok and do silly dances, and he's just like, I got into this to make music, and now I'm having to build a social media following because that's apparently where songs go viral and stuff. And even in the book publishing industry, there's a time every June or July where the publishers will start emailing everyone who's got any kind of audience, because they know that the way to guarantee book sales is to give a book deal to someone with an audience. And a lot of genuine writers are just like, I don't have a platform. I need to build my email list. I know I should be on Twitter and Instagram and all those things, and I just can't be asked because it's not what I signed up to do. Yeah. And so it's this weird incentives where a lot of the social media famous people are getting book deals and stuff, where now writing a book is now anyone with any kind of audience can just publish a book with Penguin or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas before it used to be more of a prestige.
You've published a book?
Working on it. First draft is done. Now we're in the editing stage.
Okay.
Shit.
Because I'd be interested again to know what the financials of that are like.
Oh.
Because I know with it, how it goes, you get given an advance when you sign the deal. Is that where most of the money comes from? And then it doesn't actually matter how many it sells, or do you get a percentage of how many it sells?
Yeah. So you get an advance, and that's usually sort of most advances for first time authors, maybe they'll give you like 10 grand in the UK. In the US, it's more like sort of in the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, if you have an audience. So let's say you get a £20,000 advance, you'll get 25% of it like on signing, 25% of it when you hand in the manuscript, 25% of it when the hardback's published, and the other 25 when the paperback's published. So across a 4-year period, you'll get this £20,000 over a 4-year period. Wow. It's an advance, which means you have to pay it off. And you pay it off from book royalties. And so with the advance, they'll say that, okay, so it's a £20,000 advance, and we'll give you 7.5% of the royalties up until you sell X tens of thousands of copies, and then 10%, and then 12.5%, and then 15% is like, whoa, that's a really high royalty figure. So if you sell a book for 15 quid, the author will be making about £1 from it-ish, if they're lucky. And for the first 20,000 of those, that pays off the advance. And then subsequently,
you just take a loan. You're in debt.
You're in debt. I mean, if the book doesn't earn out in its advance, which the vast majority of books don't, then you don't have to pay anything, because I mean the publisher has taken that risk.
I see.
And so once your book has earned out its advance, at that point you're making £1 every sale. And if you're James Clear and you've sold 12 million copies, now you're winning. Yeah. If you're basically everyone else and you've sold, like, there was a stat that was going viral on Twitter because there was some book fair recently where like 98% of books don't even sell more than like 20 copies. So like the publishing industry is losing so much money, but it's the Atomic Habits, it's the Harry Potters, it's these huge books that are funding the whole thing for the other minnows that don't make any money at all.
Yeah, I did a video where I got a book to be #1 on Amazon bestseller in the poetry section.
Yeah, I watched that. That was good.
And it's slightly jaded my I saw, I think it was Piers Morgan said, like, did a congratulatory tweet for himself that his book was the top of the Amazon best-selling list, and I just kind of sat there thinking, you need about 25 copies to get up there. But it's. Do you think that's detrimental to the publishing industry in the whole? Do you think like the way that?
Yeah, I just think the publishing industry from people I know who are in it are just like, it's kind of dying. There's no need for that gatekeeper anymore. Like back in the day, where the only way to get your ideas out would be via television or via publishing press. These days, anyone can publish anything on Amazon, and it's trivial. And so, like, what is the point of a publisher? They say they're going to market the book and stuff, but they don't really, and they go after people with audiences, knowing that the audiences can sell the ticket.
Yeah.
It's a weird kind of system where the margins are so low that.
So within, I mean, it's probably I felt very like an alien when I was in Edinburgh Fringe, because I was somebody who had an audience and I was selling tickets, and it was my first Edinburgh Fringe, and I've done comedy for 18 months, and so all of the comedy kind of reviewers that comedians reviewers came in, I got absolutely slated. Like, I was getting horrific reviews. And is that the same in the book world, that people with audiences are kind of like, their books are like looked down on by traditional
very much
big publishing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of sort of insider baseball type stuff around the New York Times bestseller list. And how if you are an academic, then you don't need to sell as many copies to get on the bestseller list as if you are a YouTuber, for example, where they're like, screw that, and you have to really like sell loads of copies for them to not even be able to justify not having you on the bestseller list. Similarly, the way they do it is like, it's like this weird secret formula, kind of, which is closely guarded, like the Coca-Cola recipe of, there are certain Walmarts in random places of America where they sample those to see how many people in Texas, in this random Walmart in this random town, bought your book in real life, because the people with online audiences drive everyone to the Amazon pre-order page. And so that's an unfair advantage that people like you and me would have if we were to write a book. But a quote normal author, they would weight the Walmart Texan sale way higher than the Amazon one. And so there's all this stuff around, how do you actually get on the bestseller list beyond actually selling books, because that's not really how it works. But there's a lot of random faffery around that. Similarly with music publishing, there's all sorts of stuff that is a bit weird. It sounds like comedy is similar in that.
I think it's almost exactly the same. And I was talking to a few people who've been nominated for the award up in Edinburgh, and like that's one of the most, probably the most coveted award in comedy or thing in comedy, and a lot of those people on that list are like, oh, I'm probably gonna have to quit comedy in the next like year and a half because I just can't afford to keep doing this. It's just it's too expensive.
So what do you like? I guess coming full circle to the career question that we talked about at the start, like, what do you see your career as being over the next like months to years?
I really don't know. I think my next goal is to build a team, and that's not necessarily a huge team, but a team that I'm really proud of and really like just I could trust implicitly. And that's hard. That's really hard to do. I think I'd still like to be telling stories. I think I'd still like to be entertaining people. I'd still like to be doing silly things, because I think there is a gap in the market for just doing things that are inherently silly and fun for the sake of it. And that's one of my biggest bugbears with TV. I've had a few kind of conversations with big producers, and I'll pitch them some ideas. They're like, yeah, we like it, but what's the why? Why are you doing this? Why? What's the deeper meaning here? And I often say just there isn't one. It's just because it's something that is just inherently silly and fun. It's like, no, there needs to be a why here. And so I really like this USP of like just doing something silly for the sake of being silly. As long as no one's getting hurt and it's a bit of fun, I think there is a place for that. So I think I'm going to try and kind of market myself as the silly guy.
The silly guy. The posh silly guy.
Posh silly guy. Yeah. I mean, that's probably will be said behind my back. I'm the posh silly guy.
Nice. But I'd love to ask you about burnout. A lot of creators talk about kind of burnout. What's been your relationship with burnout?
I have burnt out a few times. I think during lockdown was a bad, like it reared its ugly head physically. Like I felt I was inherently just very depressed, and I don't think I do enough to combat burnout. Again, it's like, it's okay. Like I know I shouldn't do this because I'll probably get burnt out, but it's fine. I'll do it on this occasion because when I get burnt out, that's fine. It'll be over in 2 weeks and then I'll be okay again. So I would love to say that I sit here and get up early and journal and I go for a run every morning to clear my head before I have my iced latte and, set the day straight. But that's not true. That is purely because I've listened to too many podcasts and I know what the right thing to say is. So I think that I don't have any good structures to avoid burnout. I have been burnt out in the past, and I probably am going to be burnt out a few more times in the future. But I think I'm too focused on that first mountain analogy that we're looking at. I'm too focused on the summit of that first mountain. And I've got blisters all over my feet, but my ice shoes are determined to get to the top. Which again is probably a very worrying thing to say, and I'll probably look back on this interview in like 3 years' time and just be like, "You were an absolute idiot."
That's a sign of growth. That's good.
But I am constantly looking for. I think I just don't prioritize the things that will stop burnout.
Why?
Because I don't think that I don't value them, and I don't value them highly enough. I don't think that they have. I can't see the objective value of them, so therefore. I don't think that they are worth the time, which I know is. But then the vague things like taking time off.
Yeah.
I then just like I went on holidays for 2 weeks after I did the Edinburgh Fringe run. I was like, right, let's take some time off for 2 weeks. And I was just thinking about the channel the whole time. I was like, well, what am I like? This is rubbish. Like I've gone away to like have some time away, but no, I'm not enjoying this time away. I was most happiest when I was doing the Fringe actually, because I was like, I wasn't thinking about the channel. I was just thinking about every day I need to do my show. And that's it. And I could compartmentalize things a little bit better.
Yeah. I find the whole sort of taking time off thing is also massively overrated. In that whenever I take time off, I'm like, great, the calendar's empty. Now I can write the book properly, or now I can like plan out this video that I've had in my mind for ages and haven't had time to think about. The way I do holidays is usually trying to do something that looks like work for at least a few hours, because then it gets it out of my system, and then I can enjoy the sunset cruise or the hike or the whatever, rather than feeling like. Haven't thought about a video for a while. Any advice you'd give to aspiring creators?
Yes. Get good at making videos, which is that you think is like, be good at it. Yeah. Or at least be good at what you can be good at. Because I think often people are so determined to find hacks and cheats with YouTube and just any job, but ultimately it comes down with, can you provide value through a video to somebody? Are you making them laugh? Are you educating them? Are you entertaining them? If you're answering to that question yes, then great. And the best way to do that is by making videos. Someone say, oh, I've made 3 videos, and what do you think? Could you give me some advice about what I should do next? I always say, okay, just make 50. Make 50, and then decide whether you still want to do this. And if nothing's working after 50 and you're not seeing any growth at all, then that's a clear sign that maybe you shouldn't be doing this niche. Maybe you should be going somewhere else. I don't agree that YouTube is too saturated and that you can't start a YouTube career now. That's absolute rubbish. I think anybody can still, there are people now with 10 subscribers who will have 10 million subscribers in 3 years' time. That's definitely true. Whether you do that through shorts, whether you do that through long form is a different conversation. And depending on the quality of the audience that you want to have. Yeah, don't get me started on that.
Sounds like a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'll start to get quite.
We've got a framework that we have for our YouTube course stuff, which is level 1 is get going, level 2 is get good, level 3 is get smart.
Yeah.
And get smart is where you worry about your niche and stuff.
Yeah.
And people are often like way too like, oh my God, is this the right, like, how am I going to stand? It's like, look, just get good at making a video.
Yeah.
Once you can do that once a week, then or whatever consistency you want, at that point, let's talk about your niche and
retention tactics
and all of that crap.
What thumbnail you're going to use. So no, I would completely agree with that methodology. So
excellent. We've got the
have fun with
stamp
the course,
of
guys.
approval. Yeah. All right, so that's it for this week's episode of Deep Dive. Thank you so much for watching or listening. All the links and resources that we mentioned in the podcast are going to be linked down in the video description or in the show notes, depending on where you're watching or listening to this. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, then do please leave us a review on the iTunes store. It really helps other people discover the podcast. Or if you're watching this in full HD or 4K on YouTube, then you can leave a comment down below and ask any questions or any insights or any thoughts about the episode. That would be awesome. And if you enjoyed this episode, you might like to check out this episode here as well, which links in with some of the stuff that we talked about in the episode. So thanks for watching. Do hit the subscribe button if you aren't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.